You're going to learn how to be a woman today, and you're going to do everything I ask you to do with the horses. Do you understand?" That's what he said as he locked the barn door like it was just another closet. And there I was, naked, cold, about to experience a hell I didn't want, with the whole world collapsing behind me. My name is Mattie Pearl Higginbotham. I am 83 years old. I was born and raised in Pineville, Louisiana, a stifling place where even the air seems to carry sin and guilt. I spent my whole life with that weight on my shoulders, and even today, when I close my eyes, I see no peace. I see that night. I see the barn. I see him. I was just a girl. I still played with stones, drawing lines in the dirt, and made dolls out of corn cobs. I was afraid of frogs, thunder, and the dark. But after that night, I learned that real fear has a face. It has a smell, and it lives inside the house. His name was Henry, but we called him Pa, my grandfather, a big thin man with a perpetual stubble and eyes that never blinked. He had lived with us since his wife died, my grandmother. They said he was shaken by the loss, but what he was free to be what he had always been inside, a sick man. Mom was quiet, one of those women who carry their weariness in their very bones. Her hands were always busy, washing, sewing, cooking, but her eyes lived somewhere else. Dad, Pa's son, was absent even when he was at home. He never hit me, but he never protected me either. He was a dull man, dominated by fear or convenience. To this day I don't know which. We lived on a crooked piece of land, surrounded by animals and dust. There were 2 horses that Pa cared for, as if they were people, Rufus and Blackie. He talked to them, gave them names, showed them affection, brushed their coats with more tenderness than I ever saw him show to anyone. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was a sign that he had a heart. How foolish I was. The routine was always the same. I woke up early, washed my face, helped my mom, carried a bucket of corn, gave water to the animals, and almost every day I heard the same thing. Go help Pa in the barn. At first he just told me to sweep. Then he started saying that my shirt was getting in the way. Then he said my shorts were dirty. Then he didn't say anything anymore. He just looked, and I already knew. But that night was different. He told me to go later, when it was already dark outside. The house was quiet. My mom was in her room. My dad was outside sharpening tools. I walked to the barn, holding the flashlight tightly in my hand. I already knew something bad was coming. Pa was waiting for me there, standing still, the horses tied up, quiet. That's when he said it. "You're going to learn how to be a woman today, and everything I ask you to do with the horses, you will do. Do you understand?" He locked the door. He put the key in his pocket. He looked me up and down like someone measuring meat at the butcher's. I was shaking. I didn't know whether to run, scream, or faint. I only knew that no one was coming, and that it was going to be a long night. I'm not going to tell you what happened, not because I forgot, but because there is pain that cannot be described. It can only be carried. When he finished, he told me to put on my nightgown, go out the back door, and go straight to bed. He said that if I told anyone, my mother would pay. He said that people who talk too much lose the ones they love. And I, foolishly, believed everything that criminal was saying. I lay down on the bed with my legs closed, my eyes open, and my heart dead. From that day on, every time I heard the barn door creak, I started to sweat cold, because it was no longer a threat. It was routine. And the worst part, my dear, is that I began to realize that Mom knew. She would look at me in the morning with those wet eyes, as if she wanted to ask me something, but couldn't. Sometimes she would call me over, but give up mid-sentence. She would run her hand over the hem of her apron as if to hold back a scream. But no one screamed in that house. No one ever screamed. If you've made it this far, my dear, leave your like. It's like a hug for this old woman here who carries too much in her heart. The first time is always the quietest, the coldest, the one that leaves your body shaking inside for days afterward, even with the heat outside drying everything up. But what no one tells you, my dear, is that after the first time, there's a second time, and then it becomes part of the clock. It became a cycle. It always started the same way. Pa calling me in that overly calm tone, as if he were going to ask for a favor. "Help me here in the barn, girl." I went, because if I didn't, it would be worse. The morning after that night, I sat at the table as if nothing had happened. Mom put a piece of dry bread on my plate without looking me in the eye. Dad read the newspaper, pretending to be interested in the news. Pa arrived last, sat right in front of me, and whistled softly, as he did when he took care of the horses. I held my breath. Whistling to me became a war siren. I spent the day with my stomach churning. With every step he took around the house, my body cringed. He spoke normally to others, but with me it was always that lingering look, as if to say, "You know your place." And I knew. I just didn't accept it. Not yet. Over time, I started trying to avoid him. I hid in the woods, pretended to be sick, spent more time with my mom. But he noticed. A man like him can smell resistance. One night, I pretended to be asleep when he knocked on my bedroom door. I didn't answer. He stood there for a few seconds. I heard him turn the doorknob, but it was locked. Then, silence. I thought he had given up. Silly me. The next day, he woke me up with his hand in my hair. He said he needed my help early in the barn. I said I couldn't, that I was sick. It was the first time I heard myself say no. He didn't answer. He just walked away. The afternoon dragged on, every second tasting like misery. When the sun began to set, my mother called me inside. She said Pa had asked me to fetch a cloth from the barn. She said it with a trembling voice, without lifting her face. The cloth. I knew, but I went anyway, because I had already understood that running away was useless. It only delayed things. When I went in, he was there, sitting on a crate with a rope in his hands. He asked if I was going to keep saying no to him. I didn't answer. He said that women who answer men need to learn the right way to obey. He told me to take off my clothes. I stood still. Then he got up. And that was the first time he hit me. It wasn't with his belt, nor with his hand. It was with the rope. One blow to my back that knocked the wind out of me. Then he said I was ready now, because real women take a beating and keep quiet. And when they don't keep quiet, they get beaten again. He told me to lie down on the dirt floor next to the horses and did what he always did. But that night, something broke inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just stared at the barn ceiling as if I could fly out through that crack. The next day, Mom looked at me differently. I think she saw the rope mark when I bent down to pick up a bucket. She didn't ask anything. She just dropped the cloth she was washing and walked away. That night she came back with a small jar of ointment in her hands. She handed it to me without saying a word. That hurt more than the rope, because then I knew. She knew. She knew everything, and she did nothing, because a woman who keeps quiet teaches her daughter to keep quiet too. I started drawing in an old notebook I found in the shed. It was the only way to let it out without talking. I drew the barn. I drew Pa as a monster. I drew myself turning into dust, disappearing. I hid the notebook inside my pillow. It was my only safe place. One afternoon, my cousin came to visit. He was about 16, my mom's sister's son. He looked at me strangely, differently, not like Pa, but with curiosity. I think he noticed the way I walked, the way I avoided being alone. He asked me to play hide and seek, but I said I didn't want to. He insisted. I ran away to the fence. When he approached, I screamed, loudly, for the first time in months. Pa came running out of the house. When he saw the scene, my cousin far away and me cowering, he laughed. "This girl sees ghosts in everything," he said. Then he looked at me with that usual look, as if to say, "Scream, but no one hears you." I started counting the days. I wrote scratches on the ground behind the house. 1 scratch per night in the barn. 1 scratch for every time my mom was silent. 1 scratch for every time my dad pretended to be busy. I reached 42 scratches. 42 nights that I didn't really sleep. But there was one night, oh my dear, when Paul went too far. He drank more than usual. The house was quiet. My bedroom door wasn't even locked. He came in without warning, grabbed me by the feet and dragged me to the barn. Mom heard. I know she heard, because when he slammed the door shut, I saw her window light up, but that was it. Just the light, nothing else. Inside the barn, he fell to the floor at one point, staggering, sweating, panting. For the first time, I thought he was going to die there. I stood there watching, waiting, but he got up and laughed as if he had won something, and whispered in my ear, "You're a real woman now, Mattie. Now deal with it." That day, Something inside me died, but something else was born. Anger, a hidden strength, because in that laugh of his, I saw that he would never stop, and if I didn't do anything, I would continue to be part of the barn, part of the floor, part of the dirt. The next morning, he woke up as if nothing had happened. He sat at the table, buttered his bread, cleared his throat, and asked for coffee. Mom served him without looking at him. Dad had already left for work, pretending that this was a house like any other. I sat down slowly, my legs aching, and stared at the floor. I heard him chewing. Every bite felt like an offense. But that day, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I stood there, silent, my mind elsewhere, reliving what he had done when he fell to the floor and got up laughing. That image stuck with me like dirt that even soap can't remove. I spent the whole day remembering that laugh, the laugh of someone who knows that no one will stop them, a sound that echoed inside me, as if to say, "You are mine, only mine, and there is nowhere to run." But for the first time, I didn't want to run. I wanted to fight back. I didn't know how yet, but inside my chest, a certainty was born. Either I did something, or I would become an animal for good. I waited until dark, went to the back of the house, where the weeds already covered the old logs. I picked up a large rock and hid it under the mattress. It wasn't a plan yet. It was anger. It was just the desire to have something to hold on to in case he came back. That night, he didn't come. Maybe because he was still hungover, maybe because he knew he had gone too far, or maybe because he knew that, eventually, everything breaks. The next day, the routine returned. He whistled in the yard, calling the horses by name, spitting on the ground as if he owned the land. Mom scrubbed clothes until the palms of her hands cracked. I washed pots as if I felt no pain in my body. We were a family of dolls, each in our own corner, pretending to be people. I went to school that day. The teacher looked at me differently. I think she noticed the bruise on my arm. She asked if I was okay. I lied. I said I had fallen off the fence. She was silent, held my hand gently, but said nothing more. And that's when I understood. Even those who notice don't act. Fear is a poison that paralyzes everyone. I went home in the late afternoon, my heart racing. I knew he would call me again, and he did. The same phrase, the same calmness. "Help Pa here with the horses, girl." I swallowed hard, but I went. I took the rock in my coat pocket. I pretended everything was as usual, but inside it was as if I were carrying a bomb. The barn was stuffy. He told me to close the door. I did. He told me to take off my clothes. I didn't obey right away. He frowned and walked toward me. When he raised his hand, I pulled out the rock. I didn't throw it. I just showed it to him. I raised it high, trembling but steady. He laughed, that contemptuous laugh. He said I was too weak, that it wouldn't save me, that he already knew my type, that a child threatening was just theater. He came closer. He put his hand on my shoulder. I froze, but I didn't let go of the rock. He noticed and stopped. We stood there for a few seconds in that silent duel. Then he walked away. He said I was becoming rebellious, that it was the school's fault, the teachers who filled girls' heads with ideas. He said that if I didn't learn my place, I would learn the hard way. I ran out of the barn. I hid the stone under the shed. I spent the rest of the night with my heart racing, waiting for punishment. But it didn't come. Not that night, nor the next. Something changed. He started to ignore me. He didn't call me anymore. He didn't look at me anymore. I thought I had won. But a man like Pa doesn't back down. He waits and attacks when we relax. On the third night, without a call, I heard him whispering with Dad on the porch. They were laughing about something. When I went to get water, he stared at me. A dry, empty look. Then he smiled. A short smile. And he said, "You don't need to come to the barn anymore, Mattie. I already have another helper." And he pointed with his chin to the kitchen window. My younger sister, Sarah. At that moment, my stomach turned. I went over to her and pulled her by the arm. I asked if he had called her. She said yes, that Grandpa wanted her to help feed the horses. She was only 6 years old, small, skinny, with loose teeth and afraid of the dark, just like me at that age. The blood drained from my face. That night I blocked her bedroom door with the dresser. I slept there on the floor. I didn't sleep a wink. At dawn I heard him walking around the house. He tried the doorknob. It was locked. He knocked softly. Then he disappeared. And there I was, eyes wide open, ready to use the rock if I had to. When the sun rose, I told my mom. I told her everything, what he did to me, what I thought he was going to do to Sarah. She fell into a chair in the kitchen. She started crying, not sobbing, silent crying. She wet her entire apron. Then she got up, hugged me tight, and said she wouldn't let it happen. But it was too late. Pa knew we knew. And a man like him, when he knows he's cornered, doesn't give up. He gets more dangerous. That afternoon, Mom called me aside. She told me to pack a small suitcase. Just one. She said I was leaving, that she had written a letter to her sister in Jackson, that I was going to stay with my aunt for a while. She said I should go and not look back. But I looked back, and I saw, from the back of the yard, Pa watching me through the crack in the curtain. Quiet, arms crossed, not smiling, not talking, just watching. The suitcase was small. It could hardly hold anything. Mom put in 2 dresses, some holy socks, half a bar of soap, and a photo of us that she had secretly taken a while ago. She said I should carry it at the bottom of the bag, that good memories helped to bear the bad weight. She hugged me so tightly that it hurt. She said I would be fine, that my Aunt Agnes was a good woman, a churchgoer, who would give me shelter, a clean bed, decent food. I just nodded, unable to form a single word. My chest felt like it was filled with stones. Every step I took out of that yard was a tug from within. On the one hand, there was the hope of never seeing that old man again. On the other, the certainty that he was still there, watching, waiting for a way to pull my foot back. I went to the station with Dad. He drove the car without saying a word, as usual. The radio played softly a sad song, one of those songs about loss, longing, and long roads. When we arrived, he didn't even look at me properly. He just said to obey everything my aunt told me, and not to come back. The suitcase remained on the floor between us. He took the car keys and left without saying goodbye. I stood there, motionless, my eyes glued to the cracked wooden floor of the station. There were 3 old men sitting on the benches, smoking and whispering. A young woman with 2 small children holding hands. No one knew. No one noticed. I could have been there fleeing a fire and no one would have noticed, because a girl with a small suitcase doesn't attract attention. The trip was long. The road seemed to drag on, each kilometer further from home, but closer to something I didn't yet know what it was. I slept a little, with my head against the window, and dreamed of the barn. I woke up sweating. When I finally arrived, Aunt Agnes was waiting for me on the sidewalk, a thin, tall woman with a tight bun and a straight dress down to her ankles. She hugged me without much warmth. She said I was too thin, that she would give me vitamins. I nodded. She took me inside and showed me my room, a bed just for me, a clean blanket, a small window. For the first time in a long time I slept without fear of the door opening in the middle of the night. The first few days were calm. Aunt Agnes was strict, bossy, but she didn't yell. She didn't hit me. She had rules. Wake up early, help with the housework, pray before meals. At first I even liked it. It was a different kind of silence, a silence without threat. But inside, my body still trembled. Every time someone said my name loudly, my heart raced. When a man passed too close, I froze. It wasn't a choice. It was instinct. At my new school, no one talked to me. I didn't have nice clothes. I didn't smile. I didn't know how to play like the others. When a classmate invited me to her house, I refused. I didn't want to go into anyone's house. Home for me was a trap. I learned to smile a little just to hide it. But inside, the feeling that something bad was going to happen at any moment remained. Aunt Agnes started taking me to church every Sunday. She sat with me in the front row, gave me the hymnal, and squeezed my hand when I sang off key. The pastor spoke of redemption, divine love, forgiveness. I listened silently. When he spoke of fathers, of male figures who guide and protect, I looked away. I didn't want to think about it, because every time I did, the image of him came back. The belt, the smell of sweat, the whistling, the laughter. One afternoon, I was helping my aunt wash the porch when a neighbor showed up. He was a friend of her late husband. His name was Charles, a tall, strong man with a soft voice. He greeted us with a smile and asked my name. At that moment, my stomach turned. I couldn't answer. I lowered my head. My aunt explained that I was shy, that I had been through a difficult time. He nodded, said he understood, but he kept looking, longingly, and that look wasn't the same as Pa's, but it wasn't good either. It was the look of someone who thinks a sad girl is too fragile to say no. After he left, I froze. I told my aunt I didn't want to go out anymore. She thought I was sick. She gave me tea and told me to rest. She didn't understand. No one understood. Pain that doesn't show up on tests is pain that no one believes. I started locking myself in my room. I read the Bible. I wrote in the hidden notebook I had brought in my suitcase. I talked to God as if begging to be forgotten. One day, while washing the sheets in the backyard, I heard a loud bang coming from the street. It was Charles. He had slammed his car door. He approached the gate and asked for my aunt. He said he needed to deliver some papers. When she came out, he looked at me again, and he asked in that tone that pretends to be polite, "Are you enjoying it here, Mattie?" I swallowed hard. I didn't answer. He laughed. That low, drawn-out laugh. It wasn't like Pa's, but it gave me the same chill. When he left, I stood there, my hands shaking, the sheets fallen on the floor. I told my aunt. I said I didn't like the way he was. She listened in silence. Then she said that Charles was a man of God, that I was too suspicious, that trauma makes us see things that aren't there. I remained silent, because I knew, when we feel it, we feel it. The body recognizes danger before the mind understands it, and I felt it. I started sleeping with the chair against the door. The nights became tense again. The old fear found a new home. My aunt noticed the change in me. She said I needed prayer. She took me to the pastor. He put his hand on my head, prayed aloud, asked for light, asked for peace. I stood there, wanting to scream, but I didn't scream, because it's through screaming that we learn to be silent. One of those nights, I heard a noise in the yard, light footsteps. I opened the window slowly. It was him, Charles, circling the house, as if looking for a crack. My heart raced. I ran to my aunt's room. I woke her up. I told her I saw him outside. She got up, went to the door, but he was already gone. She said it must have been some animal, that Charles would never do such a thing, that he was a friend of the family. I wanted to stamp my foot, to scream that, no, it wasn't an animal, but I just nodded. I went back to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed. I spent the night awake. That's when I understood that leaving home wasn't the end of the horror. It was just a change of scenery, because there are men who can smell a broken girl from a mile away. After that night, I started leaving notes for myself under my pillow, short words, dry phrases, just to remind myself that I was still here, because when everything around you seems to say that you're exaggerating, that you're seeing too much, feeling wrong, it's easy to start believing that it's your head that's broken. But it wasn't. The noise in the yard had been real. The way he looked at me, real. And the fear that lived in my stomach, more alive than ever. Aunt Agnes stopped talking about it. She went on with her life as if that night had been just another gust of wind. She went back to waking me up early, telling me to pray, complaining about the way I left the dishes in the sink. The house went on, but I didn't. At school, my classmates started whispering. They said I was weird, that I didn't speak properly, that I walked hunched over like an old woman. They didn't know anything, of course, but even without knowing, they could sense it. Children can sense things. One of them pushed me one day in the hallway. I fell on my knees. I tore my uniform. I didn't react. I just got up and left. When I got home, my aunt saw the blood on my pants. She asked what had happened. I said I fell down the stairs. She looked at me for a second longer than usual, then turned her back. She went to make coffee as if nothing had happened. Charles came back. He always came back. He brought flowers for my aunt, bread, sometimes clothes that he said were donations, always with that smile of someone pretending to be good. But I saw it, the way he dragged his eyes over my body, how he slowly ran his hand over his beard when he thought no one was looking. And one day, while I was washing the porch floor, he leaned against the edge and said quietly, "You're becoming a young lady, huh?" I felt like throwing up. I dropped the bucket right there and went inside. My aunt asked why I left everything scattered around. I said I felt sick, that the sun was too strong. She nodded. She said she was going to make some tea. That night, I blocked the window with 2 pieces of wood. I leaned the cabinet against the door. I lay down, breathing heavily. The house slept and I kept watch. I stayed like that for hours until I heard footsteps in the hallway. Light, slow, like someone who knows exactly where they're stepping. The doorknob turned, but the door didn't open. Silence. Then more footsteps, coming back. My skin turned cold. Auntie didn't say anything the next day, but she looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger, nor pity. It looked like fear. Fear of me. I wrote a letter, addressed to myself. In it, I told everything, every detail, every name, every place. I kept it inside an old Bible at the back of the wardrobe. It was my way of ensuring that, if I ever disappeared, someone might understand. It wasn't much, but it was all I could do. The following Sunday, the church was full. Auntie made me wear a new dress. She said it was a gift from Charles. My blood boiled. I wanted to rip the clothes off in the middle of the street, but I went. I entered the church with my head down. The pastor spoke of forgiveness, obedience, virtuous women. My aunt sighed at every word. All I could hear was the sound of my heart, trying to escape through my mouth. When the service was over, he came. Charles. He was with another man. He said he was his cousin from out of town. He introduced me. The cousin looked me up and down and smiled. That was too much. I ran away. I left the church before my aunt noticed. I ran down the road, into the woods, and hid behind an old shed behind the school. I cried there, a silent cry from someone who can't take it anymore, but also can't make a sound. When I returned, my aunt was furious. She said I had embarrassed her, that Charles had been worried, that I couldn't go out like that. I just listened, sitting there, my feet still dirty with dirt, my head throbbing. That night, I got everything ready. I took the Bible, tied it with a cloth, and put it in a bag. I wrote another letter. This one was for my aunt. I said I couldn't take it anymore, that if she really wanted to protect me, she had to stop pretending. I put the letter under my pillow. I waited until dawn. When the house was asleep, I left through the back door. I took only the essentials. The rest I left behind. I walked for hours. To the bus station. I had no money, but I met a lady who recognized me from church. She said she was going to a neighboring town and could take me in the back of her truck. I went, aimlessly, without a plan, but with the only thing that mattered, distance. I spent the next few weeks at this lady's house. Her name was Miss Ruth. She was a widow, lived alone, had children who had already left home. She gave me a mattress, hot food, and silence. Good silence. No stares, no threats. I worked in her yard, helped with the laundry, cleaned the house. I didn't ask many questions. I think she understood from the beginning that I needed peace more than questions. But peace never lasts. Auntie showed up. One day, out of nowhere, she arrived at Miss Ruth's house with the pastor and Charles. They said they were worried, that they wanted to take me back, that I was just a scared little girl. Ruth wouldn't let them. She said that as long as I was there, no one would touch me. The pastor tried to argue. He said it was a sin to disobey your family. She replied that what they were doing to a defenseless girl was a sin. Charles looked at me angrily. At that moment, I knew they weren't going to give up. That night, Miss Ruth called me to sit on the porch. She said she knew people who helped girls like me. She said that if I wanted, I could go to a place far away where no one would find me. It was risky, but it was either that or wait for Charles to break into the house through the window one day. I agreed. The next day she took me to a different pastor, from another city, a quiet man with a white beard. They talked to each other. Then he looked at me and said, "The road is long, but there is light ahead." He put me on a bus with 3 other girls, each with her own story, none with a happy face. We traveled in silence, a journey that seemed to never end. And it was on that road, surrounded by strangers, that I understood. Escape is not freedom. It's just the first step. Because to truly be free, we need to break the chain from within. And that, my dear, was still going to take a long time. The trip seemed endless. The trees passing by the window were all the same. The road never ended, and the smell inside the bus was a mixture of dust, sweat, and sadness. None of the girls spoke. Each one was stuck in her own corner, clinging to the little she had left. Some slept with their eyes open, others stared into the void with the look of someone who had lost all hope. I was in the middle, neither alive nor dead, just existing, like someone waiting for time to pass until the body forgets how to feel. After many hours, we arrived at a place that seemed like another world. The town was small, surrounded by mountains and silence. The houses had low fences and flowers in the windows, but inside, I knew that every house hides something ugly. We were taken to a simple house with a wooden porch and the smell of soap. Inside, a woman with white hair and a flowery blouse welcomed us with a calm smile. She introduced herself as Martha. She said we were safe there, that no one could hurt us. I wanted to believe her. I shared the room with 2 other girls. One was called Dora, the other was Lacey. Each had a look that didn't match their age. Lacey had marks on her arms, old scars. Dora walked hunched over, as if her body had become accustomed to hiding. No one asked any questions. We just shared space, food, and silence. It was a strange kind of peace, like when the sea is too quiet before the storm. Martha gave us simple tasks, helping with the garden, tidying the rooms, preparing food. She said that keeping our hands busy helped our minds to stop racing. She spoke firmly but not harshly. When I made a mistake, she would just correct me and say, "You're still getting used to breathing." It was the first time anyone had spoken to me as if I were a person and not a broken thing. In the first few weeks, I hardly ate anything. My stomach rejected everything. I would wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, my heart racing as if Paul were right there beside me, ready to pull my foot. Every time I heard a footstep in the hallway, I held my breath. It was a reflex. There's no way to teach your body to forget. One day, Martha called me to help her with the papers in the office. She said she needed a helping hand to organize some files. I sat next to her, sorting through the folders, trying not to shake. She watched me for a while, then asked quietly if I wanted to talk. I shook my head. I didn't want to. Talking meant reliving it all. She didn't insist. She just said that when the weight became too much, she was there for me. I started to get into a routine. My body began to react. I woke up less afraid. I ate a little more. I even laughed softly once when Lacey burned the cake and left the kitchen with her face blackened by smoke. That laugh came out on its own, and when I realized it, I was startled. It had been so long since I had felt lightness that it hurt, as if laughing were betraying the pain. There was an old man who showed up sometimes. He brought donations. His name was Jack. He was old, walked slowly, wore a hat. He was respectful, but even so, every time he arrived, I took a step back. Martha noticed. She told me one day that Jack was safe, that not all men were animals. I wanted to believe her, but inside me, everything still said otherwise. Weeks turned into months. I started writing again. I got a clean notebook, without lines. I wrote stories about people who ran away, who found their way, who found strength. None of them were mine, but they all carried a piece of what I wanted to be. I showed one to Martha. She read it slowly. Then she put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You write like someone with fire inside." I almost cried, but I held it in. Lacey left first. They said a family was going to take her in. We cried together. Then it was Dora's turn. I was left alone in the room. The empty bed made me feel distressed. One night, I woke up from a nightmare so intense that I fell out of bed. Martha came and helped me up. She hugged me. I cried in her arms. It was the first time I had let anyone see me weak since I ran away. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, holding me. Sometimes that's all we need, someone to stay. I started helping with the new girls who arrived. I explained where the soap was, how to fold the sheets, what they could and couldn't do. I looked at them and saw myself, each one with their own broken pieces, their invisible baggage. I felt a desire to protect them, to tell them that it would pass. But I myself didn't know if it would pass. One day while sweeping the porch, I saw a car parked across the street. It wasn't just any car. I recognized it right away. Same model, same color. Charles. My body froze. Martha noticed. She asked what was wrong. I told her. For the first time, I said his name. I told her everything. How he prowled around. What he said. The way he looked at me. She didn't interrupt me. She just listened. Then she got up, went to the phone, and made a call. She asked for backup. She said we needed protection. She didn't ask if it was true. She believed me. That broke me down. That night, I stayed in my room with the window closed, my heart racing. But no one broke in. No one tried to get in. In the morning, the car was gone. But inside me, the alarm was still going off. I understood that no matter how far I ran, the past would find us, sooner or later. I decided to write everything down, every detail, every name, the barn, Pa, Charles, the school, the escape, Aunt Agnes's house, everything. I almost filled the notebook. Martha kept it for me. She said that when I wanted to, I could show it to someone, a lawyer perhaps, but that it was my choice, mine alone. There, for the first time, I felt that my voice had value, that my pain was worth recording, and that perhaps my story could help another girl one day. It took months for my body to stop shaking at the slightest noise. The time I spent with Martha gave me a kind of grounding, a place that didn't shake when I stepped on it. But that doesn't mean the fear disappeared. It just moved somewhere else. Before, it lived in my room, in the barn, in the eyes of men. Now it walked quietly inside me, waiting for the next step, because surviving was a habit. Trying to live, that's what made me dizzy. Martha began to encourage small outings. First just in the garden, then a short walk to the corner market, always in a group, with the new girls. The first few times were difficult. People's eyes burned me, even when they weren't looking at me. Passing a man on the sidewalk made me hold my breath. Every door behind me seemed to hide danger. But every day I let go a little bit. A breath of air here, another there. Little by little, I got to know the owner of the bookstore, Mr. Henry, a man in his 70s, small, with thick glasses and a low voice. He always asked how I was, but never insisted. He let me sit in the corner of the store, read old books, rummaged through the shelves. One day, he gave me a new notebook. He said that writers need a clean slate to start with. I smiled without showing my teeth, but I kept the notebook like someone who keeps a medal. Writing became part of me. Every night, I put pieces of myself on paper. Sometimes it didn't even seem like my story. I changed names, places, colors, but it was always me there, trying to understand how I got here. Martha read some of my writing. She said my voice was strong, even when I spoke softly. That gave me courage. Over time, I started attending a sewing class at a local church. It was a room full of older women, laughing at silly jokes, sharing weak coffee and gossip. At first, I stayed in a corner, just watching. Then one of them called me over. Mrs. Ruth. Her hands were twisted with arthritis, but she sewed as if her fingers were still young. She taught me how to thread a needle, hold a needle, pull fabric without tearing it. She talked to me as if I were her granddaughter. It made me forget for a few minutes where I came from. During one of these meetings, I heard someone ask my full name. I froze. I thought about lying, making up another name, but my mouth spoke before I could think. I said, Mattie Pearl Higginbotham. The woman repeated it slowly. She said she knew that surname, that there was a family in Pineville with that name. My blood ran cold. I just replied that I no longer had contact with my people there. She nodded, didn't insist, but since that day, I started looking around more carefully. Even though I tried to move on, the past sent me reminders, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in smells. One day, I found an old shoe behind the laundry room door. It had the same sole as the ones Pa used to wear. It wasn't his, of course, but the sight made me sit on the floor and cry until I lost my voice. Martha found me there, curled up. She just gave me a glass of water and stayed by my side. Her presence was what kept me going. What no one explained to me is that when we start to get better, a terrible guilt sets in, as if smiling were betraying everything that had happened, as if taking a step forward were abandoning who I was. I spent days fighting with myself for feeling joy when I got a stitch right, for laughing at one of Mrs. Ruth's jokes, for eating cake without feeling guilty. I had to learn that taking pleasure in the little things doesn't erase what I suffered. It just shows that I still have pieces of myself alive. A young man showed up at church class. He was the grandson of one of the seamstresses. His name was Daniel. He had a calm manner, a short smile, large hands. He helped his grandmother with the threads, held the scissors, carried the bags. One day, he offered me a piece of cake. I thanked him without looking. In the following weeks, he started striking up conversations. Silly things. Time, sewing, books. I didn't say much, but I responded. One afternoon, he walked me to the corner. We walked in silence. When we said goodbye, he said he liked talking to me. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. When I got home, Martha looked at me and smiled. She said that sometimes we need to let someone look at us without pain. But trusting is another thing. Every time Daniel appeared, my body stiffened. Every gesture of his was analyzed. Every word weighed heavily. I started to avoid him. I skipped classes. I hid in the library. I wrote letters that I never delivered. Until one day he showed up with a book, an old novel. He said he thought I might like it. He handed it to me and left. That broke me down. I read the book in 3 days. Then I wrote a letter. I said thank you. I said I didn't know how to deal with it. I said that fear still lived here. I didn't deliver it. I started avoiding the mirror. Every time I saw myself, I saw a mixture of girl and shadow. I wanted to forget, but I didn't want to erase, because erasing would be pretending that nothing happened. And everything happened. To me, in my body, in my story. One afternoon, Mrs. Ruth asked why I didn't sew with the others anymore. I replied that I was tired. She took my hand and said, "Too much tiredness becomes a prison, girl." That stuck in my head, because it was true. I didn't want to go back to the cage, even though I was afraid of the street. I wrote a long story. I invented a girl named June. She ran away from home and became a seamstress in a distant city. She met a good man, but took a long time to accept him. One day she faced her past and found a way to exist without guilt. When I finished, I showed it to Martha. She read it, then looked up and said, "That girl is you, isn't she?" I didn't answer, but she knew it was. Time passes in a strange way when we live trying to forget. The days seem the same, but there is always something that changes inside. A thought that squeezes, a smell that comes back, a memory that pulls another. I used to pretend that everything was fine, smiling when I needed to, helping with the chores, writing my stories as if that would save me. But one day, none of that mattered anymore. All it took was an envelope. I came home from church class, as usual. I went inside, washed my hands, and went to put my things away when Martha called me with a different tone in her voice. She was sitting at the table in the living room, the sealed envelope in her hand. She said it had arrived for me. No sender, just my name written in bold letters. She handed it to me slowly, waiting for my reaction. I sat down and stared at the paper for a few seconds without touching it. When I finally opened it, the world spun. Inside was a short letter, 4 sentences, no name, but I recognized that handwriting, the coldness, the certainty. It said they knew where I was, that I could run, but I couldn't hide forever, that family is a bond, and bonds are tight. I finished reading and dropped it on the floor. Martha picked it up and read it silently. Then she looked at me as if she already knew what I was going to say. I didn't need to explain. She understood. We didn't speak for a while. Then she said I had 2 choices. Leave again, start over far away, with another name, another place, or stay and face it. Her words seemed simple, but their weight was enormous. Staying meant facing what I had always tried to bury, but running away meant getting tired again, erasing everything I had already rebuilt. I didn't answer right away. I said I needed to think about it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed with my notebook open. I reread every story I had written, every piece of my pain translated onto paper. I saw how far I had come. I saw the strength I didn't even know I had until then. And there, I decided I wasn't going to run anymore. Not for myself, but for every girl who still thinks she has no choice. I wrote another letter, only this time it wasn't about escape. It was about reporting the abuse. The next day, Martha took me to a woman who worked with victims, a lawyer with a stern face and sharp eyes. I read the letter to her. I told her what had happened before her. The barn, Pa, my aunt, Charles. She didn't interrupt. She just took notes. When I finished, she said it would be difficult, that it could take time, that it could hurt again, but that if I wanted to, She would go all the way with me, and I wanted to. We started the process, gathering names, dates, places. Martha helped me remember details that my mind had erased. It was like digging a hole in ground that had already collapsed. Every time I thought I had forgotten, a phrase would come back, a smell, a sound. Reliving it all was like walking barefoot over the wound itself. But I kept going, because now it was no longer just a memory. It was documented truth. After weeks, we received a notice. The police had gone to Pineville. They questioned neighbors, family members, teachers. They discovered that Charles had other complaints against him, that Paul's name appeared in other girls' stories, that my mother, she tried to speak up once. She was silenced. By the church, by the town, by fear. That hurt. Knowing that she tried, knowing that maybe if someone had listened, I wouldn't have had to carry it all alone. The lawyer said we had enough, that there could be a trial, that maybe someone would be arrested, but that I needed to testify in front of strangers, in front of eyes that would analyze me, doubt me, weigh every word. I didn't eat for days. Martha held me every night, telling me I wasn't alone, that justice was slow, but that eventually it would be served. On the appointed day, I dressed in simple clothes. My hair was tied back, no makeup, nothing that could be used as an excuse. I entered the room with shaky legs. I sat down in the chair, and I spoke. I spoke like I had never spoken before. I looked into the eyes of the judge, the lawyers, those who pretended not to understand what a child had gone through. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for pity. I just told my story. When I finished, the room was silent for seconds that felt like hours. Then the lawyer put her hand on my shoulder. She said I had done more than most people can do. She said that no matter what happened, I had broken a cycle. That stayed in my head for days. Days later, we received the news. Charles was arrested. Other victims came forward. My grandfather died 2 days before the subpoena. They said it was a heart attack. I felt nothing. No relief, no joy, no sadness, just emptiness. As if a door had closed and there was nothing left on the other side. My aunt disappeared. She left town. No one knows where she went. Maybe she understood that her silence helped more than it saved. Maybe she ran away from the shame. I didn't look for her either, because there are bonds that, when broken, don't deserve to be tied again. I went back home. Martha was waiting for me on the porch. She didn't say anything. She just opened her arms. I stepped into that embrace like someone returning to the only place where they don't have to pretend. For the first time in a long time, I slept without fear of dreams, without startling awake. My body was tired, but my soul was lighter. It took days before I could look at myself in the mirror. Really look. The kind of look that pierces the skin, that ignores the messy hair, the deep, dark circles under the eyes, the crooked curve of the mouth. I had spent so much time running away from myself that facing my own face seemed like punishment. At first I looked quickly, just out of the corner of my eye, like someone avoiding bumping into a neighbor who brings back bad memories. But one morning, with the sun shining crookedly through the crack in the window, I sat down in front of the dressing table mirror and stayed there, still, just looking. I saw a woman who still had traces of a girl, eyes that had seen too much, a mouth that learned to be silent before learning to smile, shoulders tense as if still expecting a blow. But I also saw something else, a firmness that hadn't been there before, an invisible line of resistance that cut across her face from side to side. For the first time, I thought, I'm alive. And being alive, for someone who has been treated like nothing, is almost a miracle. After the trial, a lot changed on the outside. People started looking at me differently, some with respect, others with pity, and some with fear. Fear of my story, of my courage, of everything I represented. When you speak the truth that others hide, you become a mirror for their discomfort. I learned that quickly. At church, some women avoided me. Others hugged me more than they should have, as if my body were an altar of suffering. Daniel stopped looking for me. I think he didn't know how to act. I didn't go after him either, not because I held a grudge, but because I understood that my path needed silence and patience. Sometimes when we start to breathe deeply, we realize that not every bond needs to be tightened again. I continued to help Martha with her chores. She never treated me differently. She never praised me more, nor did she go easier on me. She continued to ask me to fetch firewood, scrub the porch, and tend to the garden. Her consistency was my anchor. When everything around me changed, she remained. And that was all I needed at that moment. I started writing again, but now with a different tone. Before, it was about survival. Now it was about reconstruction. The words came more calmly, no less intense, but with less despair. I wrote about girls who won without raising a sword, about women who didn't apologize for existing. I started putting everything together in a new notebook. Martha suggested showing it to a publisher in the neighboring town. She said my story could help others. I hesitated. To show is to expose, and exposing hurts. But then I thought, if I survived, I can tell my story. I sent it by letter, without hope, just to get rid of the weight of keeping it to myself. Weeks passed, until an envelope arrived. The answer was straightforward. They said there was truth in my words, that they wanted to publish it, under another name if I preferred. I read it with trembling hands. Martha hugged me. She said it was more than paper. It was freedom. It was a way to turn pain into a beacon. I accepted, with a new name, made up, but every line was mine, my bones, my skin, my blood. When the book came out, I was afraid. What if someone from my town read it? What if they found out? But then I realized, whoever wants to find out, let them face their own shame too, because my secret was never mine. It was always theirs. The book was small, but it circulated. Some letters began to arrive, from other women, other girls, different stories but with the same background. Barnes with another name, Paws with another face. Each letter hurt and healed me at the same time. I read, cried, replied. I said, "You are not alone," because that's what we need to hear most when everything seems like a lie. One day, a young woman knocked on Martha's door, young, with deep-set eyes. She said she came because she read the book, that she thought she was the only one carrying that weight. I spoke to her in the garden. We sat under the shade of a tree that no longer bore flowers. She broke down. I listened, just as Martha had done with me. When she finished, she held my hand and said, "You gave me courage." At that moment, I understood that no matter how great the pain, if it can serve as a bridge, it is worth it. The scar on my chest hasn't gone away. Sometimes it burns, especially when the wind blows in a way that brings back old smells. But today I know that it's part of me. I don't like it, but I've learned not to hate it, because it was there, in that tear, that my strength was born. Martha fell ill months later. She lay down and never got up again. I stayed with her until the end. I held her hand as she had held mine so many times. Before she passed away, she said I was the daughter she never had, and that if she had to choose again, she would choose me again. That stayed with me like a prayer. After she was gone, I kept the house, taking care of it as she did, welcoming people as she did. I always knew it wasn't over, even with the trial, with the book, with Martha's house becoming mine, even with all the twists and turns life had taken since I left the barn. I could never forget her name. Sarah, my sister, the little one, the one who stood in the kitchen shadows with her finger in her mouth, watching everything without really understanding. She stayed there the whole time, silent. And I ran away, because I had to run away. But every time I lay down in peace, even if it was just for one night, the image of her little face looking out the window as the station car drove away came to me. I never saw her again. I never heard from her again, until a new envelope arrived. It was white, with no return address, just like the other one years ago. I opened it with cold hands. Inside was a short letter, signed with a name I hadn't seen since I was a child. Sarah Higginbotham. 2 lines. "I know who you are. I know what happened. I want to see you." It didn't say where or when, just a phone number and the phrase, "I'm not the same anymore." I kept it for days. I didn't call. I didn't throw it away. I put it in the notebook where I write everything. I tried to sleep and couldn't. I tried to eat and lost my appetite, because it wasn't just about finding someone again. It was about facing what I left behind. It was about finding out if she survived. And, worse, how. One night, after tossing and turning in bed for the 5th time, I got up and dialed the number. My heart felt like a hammer inside my chest. It rang 3 times. Then a voice, thin, scratchy, but confident. "Mattie?" All I could say was, "It's me." We were silent. Then she said, "I need to see you." I arranged to meet her for coffee at a neutral place in the city center, far from home, far from the past. I went in the morning, before the sun got too strong. When she walked in, my world turned upside down. She was no longer the skinny little girl with loose teeth. She was a woman with deep-set eyes, shoulder-length dark hair, scars on her wrists. But it was her, and there was anger on her face. She sat down without smiling. She said she just wanted to listen, that she wasn't going to yell, that she wasn't going to cry, but she wanted to understand why I left her there. Every word was a blow. I tried to explain. I said I was a child, that Mom sent me away, that I didn't know what would happen next. She interrupted, "But you knew what he was doing." That sentence tore me apart, because I knew, and even so I left. I said I tried to protect her, that I locked the door, that I warned my mom, that I tried to stop him. She laughed quietly. She said my mom died 3 years later, of a heart attack, but that her heart had been dead long before that. She said old Pa went blind, that he died rotten and alone, and that before that he tried to do it with another girl from the street, but he was caught. I stood there listening. Her voice was calm, but every word felt like a dagger. After a while, she said she was beaten a lot, that she was beaten by Aunt Agnes when she hid, that she heard the same phrases I did. "You're exaggerating. That's made up. Girls don't run anything." She said she only survived because she learned to lie, to pretend she was mute, that she didn't remember anything, that she never saw anything. She said she had been looking for me for years, that she thought I was dead. When she discovered the book, she recognized every line. She said she read it and cried, that she screamed with rage, but that she also understood, that I ran away because it was either run away or die, that there was no way for both of us to get out, that it was impossible. We cried. In the middle of the cafe, surrounded by people who knew nothing, she held my hand. She said she still couldn't forgive me, but that she wanted to try, that she wanted to get to know the woman I had become, that she wanted to see if she could still call me her sister. I said yes, that it hurt, but yes. We saw each other other times, little by little. She went to Martha's house. She was silent when she entered. She said she could feel peace there. She stayed for 2 days. She helped me clean the basement. We hardly spoke, but we shared space, something we never had. One afternoon, she showed me a box. Inside were old papers, letters that Mom had written but never sent. One of them was for me. She said she loved me, that she was afraid, that if she could, she would run away with me, that she was sorry. I cried until it hurt. Sarah stood there, quiet, as if she were also crying inside. In the days that followed, we talked more, about the nights, about the scars, about the dreams that turned into nightmares. Neither of us sleeps well to this day, but knowing that she's alive, that she found me, that there's still a possible bond, that gave me something new, a kind of hope I didn't know. After Sarah came back into my life, nothing was the same. The silence inside the house changed. It was no longer the silence of fear, nor the silence of escape. It was a new interval, where 2 survivors tried to learn to exist side by side. She slept in the guest room, with the door ajar. I left the hallway light on, not for me, but for her, because now I understood that every detail could be a bridge or a trap, and we didn't want to stumble anymore. The days passed slowly. She helped me in the kitchen, in the garden, sometimes spending hours in silence sewing small pieces of cloth as if she were sewing her own soul. Sometimes she would lie in the hammock and stare at the ceiling as if talking to her own ghosts. I didn't ask. I just stayed close by. Sometimes that was enough. Someone nearby, without demanding, without pressuring, just being there. She started writing too. She borrowed my notebook and scribbled down random phrases, memories, scenes she remembered. One day, she showed me a page. It said, "I don't remember your voice, only the sound of the door closing." That hit me hard. I cried silently, my face turned toward the floor. She was quiet, but then she said, "Today, I hear your voice. It was there that I realized that maybe, after all, there was still room for a fresh start. Little by little, she started going out with me, to the bakery, to the grocery store, to the village church. People stared, two silent women, similar, with hard looks. Some asked if she was my daughter. I said she was my sister. No further explanation, because no one needs to know everything to respect a story. One day, we were invited to a meeting at the town school. They wanted us to talk about violence, about overcoming it. I wanted to refuse. I said I didn't know if I could handle it. But Sarah looked at me and said, "If we stay silent, it's as if we never existed." And there at that moment I saw in her a strength that even I didn't have. We went. We sat in a room full of teenagers. We told them the basics. No names, no details, but the truth. We said that hidden pain grows, that silence is not protection, that family can be poison. At the end, a girl came up to us. She said she heard strange noises at home at night, that she was afraid to tell anyone. Sarah hugged her. She said, "I know how it is." After that day, more girls showed up, some just to listen, others to talk. The house became a refuge, not like Martha's, but our own version, with our scars exposed, without promising healing, but offering a listening ear. We made coffee, sat on the porch, and let them talk. Sometimes just the act of telling saved a piece of them. The book was re-released, this time with our real names. Sarah wanted it that way. She said she didn't want to hide anymore, that she had lived too long in the shadows. When it came out, we received letters from all over, some with harsh words, others with gratitude. I read each one, and I kept them, because there was proof that our story was not in vain. One day, sitting in the backyard, she asked me if I thought everything we had been through could have had some purpose. I said I didn't know, that maybe some things really don't make sense, that some pain is just pain, but that if someone is saved because they heard our story, then maybe that's something. She stayed with me until the end. When her health began to fail, I took care of her as she had taken care of me when she returned. They were minor illnesses, nothing serious, but her body had already endured years of fear. Her soul weighed more than it should have. Even so, she smiled, in a small but sincere way. She said she never imagined she would live so long, that she never thought she would feel peace, and that, even if only for a short time, she finally felt it. When she left, it was on a quiet dawn. I woke up and knew. I went into the room, held her hand, whispered that she wasn't alone, that she had won, that she had become a beacon. Then I stayed there for hours, remembering the little girl in the kitchen, the look out the window, the phrase on the piece of paper. "Today, I hear your voice." I never forgot it. I buried her next to Martha. I insisted on it, because those two women held my soul when it almost disappeared. I planted a tree between the graves. Sarah liked shade. She once said that shade also protects when it comes from the right place. Today, I'm 83 years old. I live alone, but I'm never lonely, because every girl who passed through this house left a piece of herself here, and every story they told became part of mine too. Sometimes I sit on the porch and wonder if Paul, wherever he is, knows what I have become, if he understands that the girl he tried to erase became a flame, that the pain he caused became a book, that the barn became a memory, and that memory, my dear, is something no one can destroy. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening, for not looking away, for not pretending it's an exaggeration, because that's how we change the world, by listening to those who almost had no voice. And if one day you feel alone, remember that there was an old woman in Pineville, Louisiana, who survived hell and still planted flowers. Because that's what we do. Even with wounded hands, we plant and we wait, because eventually it blooms.